Hello, everybody. Welcome to our live demo today. If you can hear me, type llama into the chat so I know that we are ready to go. Excited to have you here today. Ready? All right. I hear myself, so I think we're good to go. Welcome today. We have Sahar Imran with us today for an awesome demo. And my name is Anna, I'll be your host. So if you guys have questions, you can just put question in all caps into the chat so we can see them clearly and that I can pass those along to Sahar as she's painting with us today. If I missed your question, don't worry, we're gonna go back at the end of our demo and I'll make sure to get all those questions answered in our Q&A. If you haven't already, make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel, turn on the notifications so you can stay up to date when we do go live, because we go live every Sunday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. So make sure that you are subscribed to our channel. Our next one is tomorrow, Sunday, May 23rd, with Heather Solier, and she's doing some monochromatic cityscapes with ink. So that should be really fun. Thank you again for joining, and I'm going to go ahead and pass this along to Sahar now so you can enjoy her awesome painting. Thanks for all the llamas. We got so many llamas. Yay! All right, Sahar, go ahead.
Okay. Hello, everyone. I'm really excited about this live demo, and I hope you all enjoy it as much as I enjoy painting my flowers. And I do a lot of different kind of work, but right now, at the moment, I'm focusing more on floral paintings, and they're not realistic flowers. They're more abstract or just say loose watercolor flowers. I have just recently rediscovered watercolors. I did watercolors when I was doing my O-levels or GCSEs as they are known now. And then for a very long time, didn't go back to watercolors and I was just doing acrylics and oils. But last year during the lockdown, and when the weather changed to cold and rainy in London, I moved a few things from my shed where I usually work into my living room, and watercolors was obviously the most convenient medium to work with when you're inside. And it just reignited my love for watercolors. And I've been doing that for quite a few months now, and I'm thoroughly enjoying myself. So I hope that you also enjoy what you see here today.
Awesome. And the reference photo is in the description, but I'm going to go ahead and post it for you guys in the chat one more time in case you haven't had the chance to see that.
Right. Okay, so shall we start off with some of my old work?
Yes, and I have the spotlight on your art space.
Okay, so let's see. I'll just show you the examples I am doing at the moment of the abstract loose watercolors. This is one. And here's another one. So you see, I just try to let them flow, let the watercolors do their own thing, and then try to rein them back in a bit, give them some control with some other dry medium or sometimes just thicker paint.
They're so beautiful.
Thank you.
I hope you guys are all as excited as I am to see this in action. It's going to be awesome. Look at those. They're beautiful.
Okay. So these two are an example of using some other material on them as well. I've used ink on this one. And for this one was not the ink, but this one had ink on it, and also Inktense, Derwent Inktense bars. I had mentioned that I would be using them in my painting today. Not necessary, you don't have to have those. You can use just pastel pencils or pastel. If you have soft pastels, you can use them as well. So these are just a few that I just work loosely, very, very loosely, putting in a lot of watercolors. Sorry, a lot of water on them, and then using pen or ink or some markers or the Inktense bars to just give them a little more definition.
Awesome. We already have some viewers saying how much they love roses, so they're really in for a treat today, right?
Yeah, so this was just trying out a new brush that I had bought. So And I wanted to include this here as well because not just for the viewers to see that everything does not have to be perfect and beautiful when you're painting. It's not just for the viewers, it's just to convince myself as well that it's okay to not produce a masterpiece every time you paint. And you just need to practice, 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 because practice makes you perfect. And these are some of those works. And just where wanted to include these two where I've used a white marker and some pen. This is another one. That so basically there might be, this took a long time for me to learn myself as well, that there are rules, and but you don't have to stick to them always. You just have to experiment and try out new things, because as you must have heard a lot of times from a lot of artists, that there are many happy accidents when you're painting, and you can just find out or just explore new things and find out something very, very exciting and beautiful in that process. So you have seen the reference photo that we're working from. And again, I will just mention here that this will not be a realistic painting. This is just a starting point, because sometimes we are at a loss and we can't really decide what to start with, where to start. So this is just a reference photo that will give you the starting point, and then you let your imagination run wild. Okay, and before we start off with this painting, I was thinking I will just show you some strokes of how I make my roses and leaves, and then we can start off with the final painting. So this is just a normal sketchbook, 300 GCM. Let me see. This is no, this is 350, 250 GSM, and the sketchbook I'm using finally for the actual painting is this one, which is from HLab, and this is 300 GCM again, and 100% cotton. So this is, the paper is slightly different from this. These two papers are different, so they obviously react to water and paint a little differently, but that doesn't matter as long as you can see how I make my strokes. It should be all right. So the colors that I'm using today for this painting is Permanent Rose by Winsor and Newton Cotman Watercolors, and I have Sap Green here. That is again the Cotman series, and I've got two other greens which are Winsor and Newton Professional series. One is Green Gold and the other one is Olive Green. You don't really need all these special greens in your palette. If you have a plain sap, well, if you just have a yellow and a blue, you can make your greens and various different shades of greens, because obviously we all know that blue and yellow will make the green. But if you, like me, do a lot of florals, then I would say if you have these colors, it just saves you some time. And then obviously you can vary them by adding some blues or reds or some other colors as well. I also just make myself these charts so that when I'm looking for the correct green, I can just quickly look at these and see which colors I should be mixing. So these are like, this is sap green and Prussian blue, and all the various shades and tones that I can get from these two colors. This is sap green and ultramarine. So I just look at these and see which colors would go exactly, or which ones I want for my painting at the moment. So I've got my Permanent Rose out, and just to darken it a bit, I might use Purple Lake. I've got this watercolor palette here. This is also Winsor Newton Cotman series. I bought these long time ago. I would say I prefer the tube paints, because the cake ones, the pan ones, can be a bit dry and chalky sometimes, but they're good enough. If you're just starting out and if you're just practicing, they're fine. And again, it just depends what works best for you. So don't be limited by other people, other artists' opinions. Just try for yourself what works best for you. And this, I've dedicated a plate for the greens because I use so much green. So I just have my greens on this plate.
That's a good idea. We have some comments about how the color charts are such a good idea. So thank you for sharing that. That's awesome.
that they really help. I didn't used to make them earlier, but recently on Instagram, there's an artist, Kara Aina, and she makes these charts. And I saw her video, and I thought they were really, really good, and they can help you in understanding colors as well. So once you make them, you don't have to go back to them all the time, but if you've made them, you have a better understanding of your colors and shades. So that really helps. So I've got my greens out. I will be using a little bit of yellow here and gamboge, and I will be making a light gray, a violet kind of gray later on for my white roses. So before we start off with the actual painting, I will just show you the strokes that you need for roses. So if we just, I'm using a size 8 brush, which is from Society for All Artists. I use a lot of their materials as well. And now that I've come across Etcher Lab and I have tried their paints and sketchbooks, I'll be using a lot of them as well. Okay, so you start off a rose with very thin or very small C shapes. And this would be the darkest part of your rose. So you can have more paint and less water when you're doing this. And then gradually you have to make bigger C's or bigger circles, half circles. So I will take a little more water and thin down the paint so that the paint is not as dark. And then pressing my brush down, I will just start making the C's.
So the first strokes were kind of with the point of the brush, and the second ones are with the side a little bit more?
Yes. And depending on the size of your rose that you want to paint, you can use different sizes of brushes. If you're making a big painting on a big piece of paper, then obviously you can use even bigger brush than size 8. Or if you're making smaller brushes, smaller roses, then you can have a smaller brush. So the center will be just using, as Anna said, the tip of your brush. Here's another one. And I'm using a thinner brush now. You just make these little C strokes overlapping, and then gradually mixing a little more water, thinning your paint, and using the side of the brush, pressing the brush down a little bit. Okay, and if you've used watercolors in the past, you know that they dry a bit lighter. So you will have to go over them just to add the darker tones once they've dried. And I will be using a spray bottle as well. I have it here, just to make it go wild. So don't worry, it won't be spoiled because we'll bring it back under control in a little while. So let it flow a little bit. And if I use my green, let me just show you how I do the leaves. So again, starting with the tip of your brush and then pressing the brush down and then just going back to the tip. So that's your leaf here. Again, just starting with the tip, pressing it down and then lifting it off like that. So there's your leaf. You can make different, you just practice with your brush strokes and your movements, your hand movements, and you can make very different kinds of leaves. So I use the same stroke, but use 2 of them to make a broader leaf. So if I just move it here, let's see. I go down like this. And because the leaves are on the rose bush or rose stem, you see they are a bit variegated. Is that the word? The leaves with the little...
Oh, yeah, I think so.
Yeah, I think they're called variegated. So So yeah, correct me if I'm wrong, but this is what I mean. So you just add a little very thin strokes to make it look like the rose leaf.
That kind of gives it a little bit more texture on the side.
It does, yes. And while it's still wet, you can add a little bit of yellow or gamboge or yellow ochre just to, and let the colors merge them on their own. That just adds a little bit of interest to your painting. Here, because our roses are still quite wet, we're not doing anything, but when we will be doing actual painting, when it's still wet, I would like to add my leaves so that this green and pink also mixes a little bit. And you just let watercolors do their own thing.
Beautiful.
And for the in the reference picture, you've seen that we have these white roses. You don't have to stick to these colors. You can use whatever colors you would like to use. But for the white roses, what I will do is start off with a little bit of camouflage for the center. Again, very thin semicircles or C shapes, and then thinning out the paint on my brush because I don't want this to be a very yellow rose. I just need a very, very slight tinge of that yellow, and then making the bigger marks. Might not be able to see it right now, but I'll show you what I'll do to make it a bit more clear. So you've got your petals all around. Also where it's very dark yellow, just smudge it with your wet brush. And then I will take a little bit of Payne's Gray. Let me show it to you. So I'm taking a little bit of Payne's Gray, and I have indigo here. So it's bluish gray, and it has to be very, very light. So if I mix more water here, and adding a little bit of that gray. And if you feel like I feel the gray is too strong at the moment, so I will just clean my brush, wash my brush off again, and dab it on a piece of tissue paper, kitchen towel, so that it's just damp and it does not have a lot of water. And then just go over these gray strokes again, and that will lighten the gray shade. And once it's dried up, then we can add a little bit of dark shades if we want to make them more defined. So I feel this is still not, is it okay if I use my?
Yeah, it should mute you, so you should be fine. Everyone is saying how lovely this is and how beautiful it is so far. Loving
Thank
it.
you. Thanks. It's just, I'm using it just to speed up the process. I don't usually use it that often because I just leave it to dry on its own. And watercolors dry very quickly, so you don't have to worry about that. If you have time, then you just leave it to dry it on its own. And then, as I said, that I will be using, you can, right now, to give it some definition, I can either just go back with more paint on my brush to add the dark lines, or what I like doing is using these Inktense bars. These are Derwent Inktense bars. You can use pastel pencils as well. And I will just use this and add where it's supposed to be dark, just add a few lines. And these are water soluble. So once you've done your drawing, if you want to do the leaves as well. Just go in with a wet brush and go over these strokes. That will just make it permanent. And it doesn't lose the texture it is giving as a dry pencil as well. So just go over it. So you see that gives it a more defined look.
Awesome. And do you normally start with like a little warm up like this before you dive into a painting?
Yes, I definitely do. It's just because if you come back, if you've been painting all along and if you do it regularly, then it's all right. But if you come back after a little break, after a couple of days, then yes, you do need to warm up again. Because as I said earlier, practice makes you perfect. And if you don't practice, you just your hand forgets the movements that you're supposed to be making. So before, in the morning today, I was just trying these out as well, just trying out my shades that I would be working with and the roses that I would be making. And again, just looking at the reference photo that I was working with. So this would probably be the white rose, and we'll have a little bit of yellow and a little bit of gray in it, and our pink roses. So I think if everybody is happy, we can start off with the actual painting now.
Yeah, absolutely. And there is one question about the spray bottle. When you do get to that part and you spray it, is it level with the paper or do you put it above the paper to spray?
It's above the paper, definitely. And I just choose the direction I want the paint to go in. So if there's a rose here and I want the water and the paint to go on this side, I would place my water bottle here and then spray it so that it's just pushing it on to the left-hand corner.
Gotcha. So you can kind of play around with it and decide.
Yes. And yes, that technique also is different on different paper. This is 100% cotton, so it does not, the paint or the water will not flow very, very freely as it did on that sheet because that was not 100% cotton and it was not 300 GSM. So it will react in a different way. So again, for that also, you need to just keep practicing and get a hold of how different papers and different things work. So I even tried the same thing on this paper because obviously I had tried on that and I knew it will flow freely on that one. So I'll just show you. This is what I was doing earlier. So the reaction of water and paint on this paper is slightly different from that. But obviously, if you've tried it before, then you would know how it reacts, and then you are in a better position to control it. Okay, so let's start off with our painting. I usually don't draw before. I do not sketch it out. Even when I'm doing work with oils or acrylics, I just tend to do it with the oil, a thinned oil paint or acrylics, and just try to do a rough sketch. So again, in watercolors, I usually don't make a sketch beforehand. If you feel you want to, you can definitely do it. There's no harm in doing it. Do whatever is more comfortable, feels more comfortable to you. I've got 2 jars of water here. Again, I sometimes forget to use the other jar, but it's just to clean my brush in one jar and then have clean water on the side because obviously you don't want your colors to mix. That will just end up in a muddy mixture on your paper. So let's start off.
And Sahar, we are at 20 minutes in, just so you're aware of the time too.
All right. Okay, so let's do the first rose. Just my thin circular strokes, the tip of the brush, and then getting more water on my brush. So that will thin out the paint, make it lighter, and using the side of the brush, I will start making the petals.
And are you kind of touching in a little bit more color in certain areas?
Yes, I'm just adding a little bit of darker tones, because when I spray it with water, I want that paint to flow through. If there is not enough paint there, then it's not going to show, it's not going to flow anywhere. I've got this, I'm using my spray bottle, and I will just keeping it like this. Here's the spray nozzle, and I will, there it goes. And you leave it like that for the time being. You can add a little water here and then, so it can spread a little bit.
That's such a fun technique.
It is. It sometimes scares you as well. I was like, oh, what did I do? But then, yes, if you're patient enough, give it time, and then you can bring it back.
So it's okay to feel like a little bit out of control in the beginning?
Oh, yes.
Good.
Fun part where you feel, oh my God, what have I done? And then when you're able to bring it back, then that gives you a sense of achievement.
And you can say, I planned that all along.
Yeah. Yes, you can. Okay, so here's my third rose.
So are you using the reference photo for the placement of the roses?
I am, yes. I'm just looking at that. And once I'm done with the basic shape of the painting or the bouquet, and I feel that there's something lacking on any side, then I can just add another rose or some leaves. So just give yourself the artistic license to go how you feel about the painting, and you don't have to stick to the photograph, because to have that realistic think, and the photograph is doing that job very well, you don't need to do it again. So this third rose is more, you can see it from the top, so it's a bit more, what do you say, open, and it's not on its side, so it will be bigger. And again, I'm just adding a little more color on this side. It will become lighter later, because the bigger petals or the outside petals are usually lighter, but I'm just adding more color because I want to spray it and I want the color to spread out. Okay.
I love the sound effects that come with the spray bottle too.
Yes, I just take a little bit of sap green and also add the green in here. And obviously, because our roses are still wet, the green is going to spread out a little bit, which is fine. You don't have to worry about it. And in the reference photo, there's no leaf over here, but I'm just adding it because I want to have this mixture of green and pink here. And then again, spray this green a little bit in this direction. And sometimes if with your spray bottle, spraying with your spray bottle is not working the way you want it to, just nudge it a little bit with your brush. Okay, so let's go for the white one.
One of our viewers said they love the Payne's gray that you used to make that white rose.
Oh, thank you. I like the color Payne's gray. So here we start off with the center.
And what color were you using for that center again?
This was Gamboge.
Okay.
You can use yellow as well. And I feel this is a bit too light, so I will touch it a little bit with orange. Just dab a little bit the tip of the brush on there and let it spread on its own. It will not go on the dry section of the paper, only where the yellow paint already is. And then I'm just taking a little bit, mixing more water in that yellow or gambuge that I was using to make broader petals now. Just keeping the brush on the side, pressing it down, and then lifting it up. Yeah, the second jar of clean water comes in handy because you're doing a white rose or a very light colored rose. So you don't want the dirty water on your brush. Otherwise, it's just going to contaminate the whole paint, the whole colors of this rose. So I've got this, and you might not be able to see it. I'm just using clean water because now I will come back in with the gray that I made earlier, which was a little bit of Payne's gray and a little bit of indigo. With a lot of water so that it's not too dark. And you have to be quick when you're doing this because you want the paints to mix together. And if you give it too much time, then it will be dried and then there will just be hard lines instead of that merging of colors there. And now if I feel the gray is a little strong, so I am just cleaning my brush, dabbing it on a kitchen towel so that it's just damp and does not have a lot of water. And then going over the gray line so that it just becomes a bit lighter. Okay. That's one. Then we have one on the side, on the right hand side, which you can see only the side of. So let's start off here. And before I forget, let me just spray it a little bit so that this can also spread out. You see, in such a short span of time, this rose is already quite dry. And that is also because this is 100% cotton paper. It's a much more thirstier paper than the other paper that I was using. So it does absorb a lot of water. So if you give it too much time, then it will dry out.
So you definitely want to keep it wet for this technique.
For this technique, yes, definitely. Okay, so I have this on the side. Again, I feel this has a greenish tinge to it, so I will add just a little bit of orange to it. And this orange is, let me just check. I keep forgetting the name. So I've got this chart that I've made for this palette. And this is cadmium orange hue. So just a very tiny bit on the tip of my brush. And then I will just dab it here. So that it just becomes a bit warmer. There it is. Here's my rose on the side. Again, this might not, you may not be able to see it very clearly, but once we add the grays and when we add the greens or the darker shades around the rose, then it will become much more clear.
It's kind of like magic when you touch that gray in. It's fun to see. And there is actually a question about the gray. How did you choose to do that with the yellow?
Well, when you look at the reference picture here, you can see the yellow tone right in the middle, and then you can see that there's a shadow there. And for shadow, we usually use a gray violet or a very light shade of purple. So that's why I tried it beforehand before doing this painting, and I did it on another sheet of paper to make sure that what I was thinking, what I was uh, um, what it seemed like to me would work is all actually working or not. So, and when I did that on the paper before doing this, I thought that looked fine. And again, if it does not have to be exactly, because we're not doing a realistic painting. So you have the artistic license to use different colors. If you want it to be a little more bluish than just gray that I'm using, just use a very light Prussian blue with it instead of indigo, because indigo is still a bit on the gray side. So it's just up to you. But because I could see the gray tones here on the side, on the shadows, and the blue, or so not blue, sorry, the orangish yellow in the center, that's why I chose to work with these two colors.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So here. Again, in the picture, this rose is in a lot of light, so it is, you can see that you can't really see the details in the picture, but because we're painting and it's our painting, we can do whatever we want to do with it. So we will give it a little more definition. And
Embrace the creative license. Do what you want, right?
Okay, and here we have our stem. And right now I'm just using sap green. I will come in later with different shades of green, a little bit darker green as well, because the variation in tones in your painting completes the painting. So you just have to see how, you just have to balance your dark and light tones. Okay, so, and we have the other rose here. So let's just bring it. You see, my brush was probably not very clean, so this has become a little more greenish, but that's all right. You can get more yellow here. Without gray. And because we're working wet and wet, this will all merge together. So we will have to come back later when it's a bit more dry to add a few more lines here and there to make it more defined. Okay, and sap green again on my brush to just add here so that okay, so we've got the basic layout of our roses. Let's start adding our leaves.
It's so beautiful already. I feel like you could stop here and it would be good to go. Let's see some more magic though.
You know, that's the tricky part of any painting, when to stop. You can't decide when to stop. But sometimes you feel, yeah, I think if I go further, I might ruin it. But it's always worth taking the risk. Now for the leaves, I'm not really following the photograph. I'll just place the leaves wherever I think they're needed. And I will be using a little bit of yellow, which is cadmium yellow hue, with my green. Just dabbing it here and there so that the green becomes a little more interesting.
And I'm just going to go ahead and mention your mini workshop, and so everyone can sign up if you're really loving this, which I see comments coming in and how much everyone's enjoying this. Jump in for the mini workshop. It's on June 19th at 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. And for more, because this is awesome. So if you're enjoying it, use that link, sign up now. And if you can't make it to that date, it is recorded as well. So you can always receive the recording for the mini workshop as well. There are a lot of comments on how roses are a harder rose for everybody. Is that something that you found as well when you're starting your flower journey?
When I started off, yes, they sometimes, they don't have to be realistic, but they should give an impression of a rose. That's what I thought. And initially, when I started painting roses in watercolors, I thought my roses did not look like roses. They didn't have to look exactly like roses, but when you look at something, you should be able to picture it. It's not a clear, realistic representation of a rose, but when you look at it, you should know that this is not a sunflower, this is a rose.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, and again, it just comes with practice. You just need to practice, practice, practice.
Well, your tips are very helpful.
I'm glad that you find them helpful, and I hope the others watching can also find this helpful and enjoy the process. So if we just, I'm just using different greens. I told you I have sap green, I've got green gold, and I've got olive green. So just adding different shades of green here and there. Now this, just to make this white rose more prominent, we need to have more green around it, and then you will see the petals will become more prominent here. Okay, where we have the leaves, I would just add some water so that they can also go wild.
That's so fun. Now, does any spray bottle work for that kind of technique?
It should. It should. I just bought this because this was handy. The size was good. Otherwise, any spray bottle should work. And you see where it's drying up, the colors are lighter than what we had applied. So you will just keep on adding a little bit more. And now with my sap green, I will mix a little bit of, it can be Prussian, it can be ultramarine, whichever one you prefer, to make it slightly darker. So this was my sap green, and then I used, let's see, who was it? 1, 2, 3. This, on my palette, this is called the intense blue that I'm using. You can use Prussian blue, you can use ultramarine. You can even use Van Dyke brown or raw umber to make your green darker. And for a very, very dark green, you can use raw umber or Van Dyke brown with one of your darker blues, Prussian blue or ultramarine, and that will also give you a very nice dark shade of green. So you see, these are just very simple kind of negative painting so that I can give more definition to the petals here and they become more prominent. You can see them clearly. So you'll see that I'm not really making any leaf shapes, or I'm not making any petals or anything. It's just negative painting just around the petals.
It kind of makes the flowers pop even more.
Exactly, yeah. So when I feel if you want to make your lighter objects in your painting stand out more, you just need a very dark background around them. That will immediately just make them pop out. So, and then we can continue with this green so that it doesn't look just odd green, so that we have a few leaves here and there. And I will just dab it here also so that it can mix with the wet green area on this side. And now, because I see I need to balance the painting with these dark tones on this side as well. This area is very light and this is a bit dark. So I will just use the same green. And again here I will.
And Sahar, I missed the 20-minute mark, but we have about 15 minutes.
Okay, that's fine.
And can you just repeat what color you're using right now?
So this was sap green mixed with intense blue on this palette, which is Winsor Newton Cotman series. You can use Prussian blue with sap green, or you can use ultramarine with sap green. That will give you a dark green.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So I've got this here. And a little bit here.
And if you guys are painting along, feel free to share your work with us, hashtag #EtcherStudio. And I also put, Sahar, your Instagram on there. So if it's something they can share with you as well.
Oh, yes, definitely. I would love to see that.
And I'm also going to go ahead and post, Sahar has some digital prints with Etcher, so they're beautiful. And if you guys want to go ahead and snag those and have some of her artwork in your house, I'm going to put that link on the chat as well.
Oh, I would be really, really happy and honored if you have that in your house. You know, I think every artist just loves to see their work in other people's houses because it just gives them so much encouragement and confidence in their own work that, yeah, it's not just them thinking they're doing a good job. The other people also think that they are doing something good. So I'm just adding a little bit of dark here. I will not make it very dark, hard lines. Just add my sap green and my intense blue there, and then spray it with water so that it becomes a bit lighter. And let's see, I'll just show you.
That is so cool.
And then I feel like putting in a bit of yellow or gamboge here because it's quite yellow on this side and it wasn't, so I'm just adding a little bit of yellow or gamboge, whichever color you would like to use. Just dab the brush on that wet paint and let it do its thing. And then you can I just cleaned my brush and with a little bit of clean water, but not a lot of water on the brush. I have cleaned it in the dirty water first and then dabbed it again in the clean jar and patted it on the kitchen towel so that it does not have a lot of water, and then so that it doesn't make very hard lines here, just spreading it out.
One of our viewers commented that they like the technique a lot that you're using for the background.
Thank you. You do give it a try because it's a lot of fun. And I think when you leave watercolors to do their own thing, they come up with something that you could not have achieved on your own by manipulating it with a brush. So it's quite nice. So I will just bring in the intense bars to add a little bit of definition to the roses, because you can see this one is quite faded. I think they have these in pencil forms as well.
Is it okay if it's wet still, or should the area be dry that you're marking on?
You can do either ways. I waited for it to be dry. Otherwise, it will not be very defined lines if you're using it on a wet surface. So it will defeat the purpose that I'm trying to achieve, that adding a little bit of definition afterwards. So for that, it will have to be dry, not completely dry, but dry enough to have these. You can see the textured lines. If it's wet, then they will not. You will not be able to see the texture. It will just dissolve in that water. So just a few lines here and there with this as well. See, this was wetter than this one. So this is slightly different. It won't be very thin lines. It will just spread out. And much darker as well. It is. And let's add a little bit here as well. I just feel they add interest to your image. So just cleaning my brush, taking some clean water on my brush, but not a lot of water. And I will just go over these lines. So you see, it doesn't lose the texture completely. The texture is still there. You can see, but because these are water soluble, you will be able to spread them out like watercolors.
And those were the Derwent intense
bars.
Inktense bars.
Yes.
What color watercolor did you use for the pink roses again?
Oh, this was Permanent Rose. It was this one. Cotman watercolor, Winsor Newton Cotman series, a Permanent Rose.
And there was a question earlier about the pink color. Do you find that some of them stain and don't move as well when you're using them?
They can. Again, you just have to try them out before you dive into your final painting. All colors have different kinds of what is the word? Different. They have a different reaction to water, and some just spread out much more easily. Some get a lot of those cauliflower kind of effect in them, and some will just don't budge. You have to really nudge them with your brush to make them spread out. And then that also depends on the brand of watercolors as well. So it's not just the shade, it's the brand as well. So just try out different brands and see which one you like to work with. I think I would like to add these white roses. Sorry. The white roses are very, very light, very bland. So let's just add a little bit of.
And I'm just going to post our survey for Etcher in the chat as well. If you guys have a minute, we'd love to hear from you. If you could just fill that out for us and let us know how we're doing.
Because I used a gray Inktense bar as well. And I've got the yellow and the gray together. And then I'm just going to go over them with the brush. Okay, so I don't like this gray because this is too dark. So what I'm going to do is take some water on my brush and then dab it with a tissue paper. That will just remove it. That's how you can rectify mistakes. Watercolor is quite a risky and temperamental medium. It has its own mind. It sometimes doesn't listen to you at all, but there are some tips and tricks that you can try to control it a little more. So I am just trying to remove the gray that I had used here. I will not let it dry on there. I will just smudge it with my brush and water and then dab it with a kitchen towel or tissue. And that is just going to remove that from the paper.
That's a good tip. And Sahar, could you tell us more about the mini workshop, what the subject will be?
Mini workshop will again have flowers. I love painting flowers. My son said, why can't you paint something other than flowers? He would rather have me paint football matches and football fields. Yeah, I'm right now, I'm more focused on flowers. So that is again, and I have a few examples. Can I show the few examples that I have for the mini workshop?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, so in the meantime, let this dry as well. So this, that would be, because it will be slightly longer than this, so that would be on a bigger scale. This was an A4 sheet, but this is some of the work that I've been doing.
Awesome. So like more details and
detail,
fun.
yes, more detail and more bigger bouquet of flowers. So we'll have more strokes and more techniques to look at.
That's so exciting. I put the link in there again. If you haven't signed up already, go get a spot. It's on June 19th at...
process. This is, I had to leave it to dry out completely so that I can add another layer. So it would be something like this. I have sent a reference photo to Etcher and they will send it out to you guys as well, which will be a bigger bouquet. And again, we will not do a realistic representation of that bouquet. We will just start off from that point and then just see how it goes. So it will be more flowers, more colors on a bigger scale, and some more techniques.
That sounds awesome.
So I think this is more or less complete. It just needs a little more dark tones here and there. So let me just use my dryer and see if it, and then I can add the darker tones to it.
Absolutely. And while Sahara is drying that, I'm just going to mention our survey one more time if you guys could fill that out for us. And also, I'm going to post our hashtag for you guys to share your work or your process, your setup, whatever you would like to share with us. We also have a chance for you to be entered in our weekly giveaway. If you do hashtag Etcher Studio, you'll have a chance to be entered in the weekly giveaway and win some prizes, like a sketchbook. It could be a voucher to go to a mini workshop. So make sure you share with us. We'd love to see that work. And I'm also just going to post Sahar's Instagram on there one more time, because share some love with our artists. They are awesome and we love having them on here. So I'm going to put that on there as well. Okay. Sahar, there's so many thanks and people are really loving this. So it's really great to see all the comments.
Oh, I'm glad. Enjoying themselves. So I will just make a very dark green, which is sap green. I have used sap green and intense blue, and then I will be using a little bit of what color is this? I've got my burnt umber here. This will be very, very dark. I will try and make it quite dark because again, it will dry up later, not later, lighter. Very dark green. There, I will add it in these spaces.
So after it dries, you kind of can just pop in some darker tones?
Yes, Yes, I think that's the best way to go about it. Otherwise, it just merges again if it's still wet. You see, that just makes it pop out so much more. We need a few leaves or a little bit of green on these sides so that these are also very clear. And again, with watercolors, we have to work light from light to dark. So, and once it's dried, you can add more layers to it, not like acrylics or oils, but you can have very thin glazes or very, very thin layers. In other mediums like acrylics and watercolor, sorry, not watercolor, acrylics and oils, you go from dark to light. You add your lights at the end. But with watercolors, you have your lights the first thing, and then you have to be careful that you protect your lighter shades um, from covering them up with your dark colors. And I'm sure many of you know that we do not use white in watercolors. White and black are usually not used. So instead of black, I prefer using Payne's gray. And for white, we use the white of the paper. And now we will just add a few leaves here and there. This has dried up quite a bit. So I will just
touch in some more.
Yeah.
And if you guys have any questions, go ahead and type them into the chat, and I can ask Sahar as she's doing her last finishing details. I do already see one, Sahar. It was just a water spray that you were using, or an air spray for in the little spray bottle?
It's just water. It's just water spray. Any spray bottle would do. But obviously, if you're using a very big spray bottles, you know, the ones that you use for ironing or wetting your hair, you have to consider the size of the page and your painting and the work that you're doing. So the small ones are quite handy because obviously you can use them on smaller scales and bigger scales as well. So I prefer using a small one. So now you see where already there was green, I am just adding the leaf shapes there.
We have another question of what color for the gray did you use?
The gray was Payne's gray and indigo, both from Winsor Newton Cotton series. And first I mixed them and then I added a lot of water because I wanted a very, very light gray on the white roses.
It's so beautiful. It looks so great. Thank you, Sahar, so much for showing us all these awesome techniques.
Oh, thank you for having me here. Thank you because seriously, it's encouragement for artists as well. It just gives a boost to our self-confidence that people are liking the work and people want to learn from us. So I'm happy to share my techniques, my experience. And again, I would say that I'm not an expert. I keep learning. Every day something new comes up, and we have happy accidents in our work, and sometimes not so happy accidents as well. But then, yeah, that's also a learning curve.
And I'm just going to go ahead and drop a bunch of links for you guys one more time in the chat so you can have the information you need. First is Sahar's digital print bundle. Please go and check that out because she has some awesome paintings in there that you can purchase. And then I'm going to post her Instagram on the chat as well, so you guys can check her work out there. And don't forget to share your work with us, #@yourstudio. So I'm going to put that in there as well. And of course, we'd love to hear from you. So fill out our survey if you have a little bit of time at the end of this demo today. Go ahead and fill that out for us. We'd love to hear from you guys. It makes us know what we can improve on or what we're doing really great with. So we love to hear from you. And please sign up for that mini workshop if you love this, and you're definitely going to love the mini workshop. And yes. Sahar, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you. And I just wanted to add that the mini workshop will have obviously more flowers, so there will be more techniques and you will learn to paint different kinds of flowers. That would be a lot of fun. And again, it will be something like this, a loose watercolor floral abstract painting, and then you will be able to add a little more definition to your painting. So you see it's still loose, but you can still make out the flowers, and it just the green that spread all over the page when we sprayed it with, and then adding more defined leaves on top, it just gives a more dense foliage to your bouquet.
It looks so awesome. And we just thank you guys for jumping on with us today. And we hope to see you in our other demos as well. And Sahar, would you like to end with anything today?
Oh, no, I just want to thank everybody who joined this live demo. I hope you enjoyed yourselves and learned something new. And do check out my Instagram account as well. And you can connect with me there, DM me if you have any questions. And I hope to see you in the mini workshop as well.
Thank you. I'm going to put your work on there one more time for everyone to see the beautiful artwork we got to see today. Thank you again, guys. Have a great rest of your day. Thank you, Sahar.
Thank you, Anna. It was fun doing this.